If you have ever used any word processing software like Microsoft Word, you probably have created tables to represent data or information in a structured form consisted of rows and columns. Hello, this is Feroz, and you are learning how to design web pages using HTML. Welcome to Lesson 4 from the series of our HTML tutorial. In this lesson, we will focus into creating HTML tables to display tabular data. Besides, we will also learn how to write comments in HTML and how to use quotation to quote text or paragraph in HTML document. If you have missed our previous lessons, please find the link of the lessons in the description sections of this tutorial. I suggest you subscribe the channel by clicking the subscribe button below. And don't forget to click the notification icon in order to receive automatic notification for new lessons in this channel. So without any further delay, let's look at the list of the topics that we are covering for our today's lesson. Let's start with the topic number 1, HTML table. When we are talking about an HTML table, we are not talking about this table. We are talking about a table consisted of rows and columns which is used to display tabular data such as product catalogs, customer records, supplier database, and so on. To create an HTML table, the first element that you need to be familiar is the table element. The table element is a container element and also a parent element for other table-related elements. The table element has a number of child elements to create a table row, table data, table header, and so on. This child element must be placed inside the table element. The table row and the table data are the child elements of the table element. The table row elements is used to define the row of a table. The table row element is a container element, and each element defines a single row in the table. Once a row of the table is defined, the next step would be to define the data cell or data field in the row. We call it table data in HTML. So, to define a table data or individual cell, we use TD or table data element in the container of table row element like this. As you can see in this example, the table data or TD container element must be placed within the table row or TR container element. The way each TR element represents one single row, similarly, each table data element represents one single cell. If you want to create multiple cells in one row, simply insert more table data elements within the table row like this. But if you want to create a table with a multiple row, simply add more table row elements like this. The important point you must remember here, as you are adding new row into the table, the number of cells for every new rows must be same as the previous row. If it goes wrong, you are not going to get a proper table structure. Okay, we have just created the table structure. Now let's put some data into each cell and view the result in a browser. Our HTML table now should look like this. The border attribute allows you to display the border of an HTML table. The value of the border attribute is in pixel, and the value of the pixel will depend on how thick you want your table border to be. Let's specify the border attribute in our table element. Right after the table keyword in a table tag, we insert the border attribute and specify the value to 1 pixel. Pixel value 1 should be the pretty much standard value for an HTML table. Let's save the work and reload it in a browser. The width attribute allows you to specify the horizontal length of a table. The value of the width attribute should be in percent value, considering the entire width of a browser width is 100%. Let's look at an example of applying width attribute in our HTML table. I have specified the width 100% in this example, which takes the full horizontal length of a browser window. You can specify whichever length you like. Let's save the work and reload it in a browser. You can also use the width attribute using style attribute. Some of the attributes we are using here are not included in HTML5. Because HTML5 specification recommendation is to use CSS instead of those attributes. We are using these attributes here because you are not familiar with the CSS yet. The align attribute is deprecated in HTML5. However, you can still use the attribute to align your table to left, right, or center. Let's try out an example in a browser. The cell spacing and the cell padding attribute are also removed from HTML5 to do with CSS. The cell spacing attribute allows you to specify space between cells. The value of the attribute would be in pixels. The cell padding attribute is used to give padding or space between the content and the inner wall of a cell. The value of the attribute also would be in pixel. Let's see the example. Now that we have a table with some data in it, but there is no header row in the table. The table header elements allow you to create a header for each column in a table. It is a container element. Let's add the header for our table. Our HTML table is almost complete, except that the table doesn't have a caption. We can't tell what this table is about without a proper caption. So let's add a caption for the table using the caption element. Similar to any programming language, HTML allows you to write comments, also called remarks, about your HTML code within a HTML document. Writing comments or short notes is a good programming practice because it helps explaining your code to others. HTML comments are not displayed in browser. Let's look at an example of writing HTML comments. The quotation and the citations are very common in content writing. Quotation, text with the double quotes, indicates that the text in the double quotes are from a different source, such as different writer or different website. Let's look at an example to understand what it is meant by quotation. In this example, the text within the double quotes refers to someone else's contents, and the double quotes specify that this content is a quotation. To write quotation in HTML, we use the HTML quotation elements. There are two types of quotations you can write in HTML. One is inline quotation, and the other one is block quotation. Inline quotations are basically short quotations, which could be a small part of a paragraph. We use quotation element represented as Q tag to create inline quotation. Let's try this example in a browser. The block quote element is used to quote a paragraph or selection of paragraph in HTML from different source, which could be from different website. For example, the following section has been quoted from Wikipedia about World Health Organization. To make this paragraph as a block quotes in our HTML document, we use block quote element like this. With block quotes element, we have to use the site attribute to specify the URL of the website where you are quoting the section from. Generally, a browser indents the block quotes. The HTML div element is a block level element, which is used to define a division or a section in an HTML document. A block level element defines the content of a web page into one or more logical blocks or division, and each division starts with a new line. The HTML div element is a container element and commonly used with the CSS. If you wish to see the block visually on your browser, you have to define the border property using the style attribute. The span is an inline element. The span element is used to define a small part of text in a single line. Okay guys, that's all for our today's lesson. In our next lesson, you will learn how to create HTML form to receive input from users. Thank you very much for watching. By the way, if you haven't subscribed the channel, please subscribe. And if you have any query, please write me in the comment section. See you in the next lesson. Until then, happy learning!